Hi guys, we're now on lesson 8.4, which is use models to multiply two fractions. So we're going to use models again, but we're going to make sure we go through this thinking about the last time we did models where we had to overlap different things on the model. It was a little bit confusing. So if you find that you're not understanding the actual model part of this, that's okay, because doing the actual multiplication across, which I think most of you seem like you have so far, it's going to be a lot easier. So while I want to show you the model, we don't have to focus all the time on the model. Okay, so that being said, we're going to look at the solve and share. I'm on page 475. The solve and share says, the art teacher gave each student half of a sheet of paper. Then she asked the students to color 1/4 of the piece of paper. What part of the original sheet did the students color? Solve this problem any way you choose. So they said model with math, you can draw a picture to represent the problem. So the first part is the art teacher gave each student half of a sheet of paper. So if I take a sheet of paper and I cut the sheet of paper in half, each student only got half of a sheet. So that's the piece that I'm going to be starting with. But then the second part of the problem says, she asked the students to color 1/4 of their piece. So it's not 1/4 of the entire paper, because remember they only got a half. So it's 1/4 of the section that they actually got. So using another color, I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to cut it like this. So each student colored 1/4 of their half. But in order to figure out the final answer, the answer is not just 1/4, because it says, what part of the original sheet did the students color? The original sheet was this one whole, right? So they did half and then a quarter. So what I have to also do is I have to turn this bottom part that they did not get into quarters also. So when I go back and I look at the full sheet now, it's not just cut into fourths, it's cut into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 eighths. So this section is going to be equal to 1/8. So 1/8 is going to be my final answer. Now, if I did that using multiplication and I didn't include the model, because they did say I can solve it however I wanted to, what I would really be doing is, what is 1/4 of 1/2? So 1/4 of 1/2, remember we're going to take that of and change it into multiplication. And then all I'm doing is I'm multiplying across. So 1 times 1 is 1, and 4 times 2 is 8. That gives me my section that is 1/8 of the whole. Now, if you take a look at the look back, and really they should have given us the look back before we did the problem, but the look back says, we're reasoning, should our answer be less than or greater than 1, and how do you know? So because we already solved it, we can actually use our answer to answer the look back. We know it has to be less than 1 because they're coloring a portion of a fraction. They never are going to color the whole page because they didn't even have the whole page to start. They only had half of the page to start with. So we know that it definitely has to be at least a half. But then they're coloring a section of the half. So if you notice, when I multiply two fractions, I end up with a smaller number. Sometimes that's a little confusing for students, because when I multiply whole numbers, like if I multiplied just 4 and 2 and I wasn't looking at fractions, I know that 4 times 2 is 8. So I'm starting with two lower numbers and I'm getting a higher number. It doesn't work that way when I multiply two fractions. When I multiply two fractions, I'm multiplying a fraction by another fraction, and what happens is my answer ends up being a smaller fraction. So 1/4 times 1/2, both of these numbers are larger than my answer of 1/8. But remember, again, the multiplication sign is interchangeable with that word of. So I'm saying a quarter of a piece, which is the half, a quarter of a half. So I end up with a smaller portion. I hope that explains that. I'm going to also